you have a minute for Comadre time?
Hola Comadres, welcome to another episode of Comadreando podcast. I'm your host, Marcy. And today we have an amazing guest, Kerry Magro. I will let him introduce himself. Who are you?
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Kerry Magro. I'm a professional speaker, author, entertainment consultant, and autism self-advocate from Hoboken, New Jersey. I've been doing this for about 11 years now, and I speak on diversity, equity, inclusion with schools and companies.
Amazing. And I usually give like a little tidbit of how I came across the person that I'm interviewing. So Kerry is world-renowned, award-winning national speaker and best-selling author. He has a doctorate in educational technology, right, Kerry?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he's a founder of the KFM Making a Difference Foundation. He's also travels the country, like he said, telling stories and giving speeches. And he's published several books, some of which are on the Amazon best-selling authors list, which are Defining Autism from the Heart, Autism and Falling in Love, I Will Light It Up Blue, and his latest, Autistics on Autism. So today's topic is achievement despite a diagnosis. And the reason why the topic came up is that as parents of neurodiverse children, we often wonder what their futures are going to look like. And it's nice to have someone share their journey and inspire and teach us. So you said that you have the diagnosis of autism. I wanted to ask, when was it that your parents noticed that you were different?
So I was not speaking until I was 2.5. So those were kind of the early signs, not speaking, when I wanted to communicate with the people I cared most about in this world, even about some of my basic needs. It was really, really challenging. So my parents went about getting a formal diagnosis. It took about 18 months to get a formal diagnosis of autism. And it was just such a life-changing moment for my parents after years of struggling to figure out what was going on. To finally have that diagnosis really meant the world to them. And then they kind of just kickstarted into giving me the best therapies possible to get me to where I am today.
So the therapies that you received, did you receive early intervention?
Yeah, so I received occupational, physical, and speech starting at 4, and then music and theater therapy kind of just started about 6.5. And that all those therapies stayed with me until I was about 19, graduating from high school.
Awesome. So what has the support been like from your family? I know your parents obviously have been very supportive, but what about like the rest of your family? Have you received support on that end as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, without my village, which I consider my family, I wouldn't be where I am today. And my mom and dad were just two of the best, not only parents, but life coaches, if you will, growing up, when there really wasn't a lot of support for those with special needs, especially in the early 90s, with the numbers of disability not being as high as they are today, and there being a little bit more support. So my family members were, I'm a spoiled only child, but my extended family were really helpful, in addition to my extended family of therapists and educators who, for many of them, taught the way I learned. And without that person first learning, person-centered learning, I wouldn't be where I am.
Amazing. I love that. So tell me a little bit more about the work you do regarding raising awareness and educating people about neurodiversities, and also, you know, kind of breaking stigmas, because I feel like that is the majority of the work that you do, because people have this concept of people that are on the spectrum that are, I feel like, outdated, because like you meet one person on the spectrum, that is just one person. That doesn't mean that every person on the spectrum is like that. So let's dive in a little bit into that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons why I changed career paths. I was in digital marketing work for a nonprofit organization in New York City. And then I decided that there wasn't enough being done to defeat stigmas and prejudices around those, especially those with disabilities. So I pursued my master's in strategic communications so I could become one of the first professionally certified public speakers who also is autistic in the country. And one of my biggest focuses right away was really just taking disability awareness and pivoting it to disability understanding and acceptance. Because at the time when I was just getting into college, there was a lot of awareness about disability by then, but there still wasn't a lot of acceptance of those with disabilities. So it became really a part of my mission. I started telling people for the first time about my autism diagnosis really in college, because I want to share those personal life experiences as well in the hopes of helping them get a little bit of a sense and look of what disability is, but also an understanding from my expertise about why we need to have larger conversations about ignorance in our disability community.
Yeah, there was I don't know if you got to see on in Facebook and Instagram, there was a story of a mom that she attended a breakfast, like a brunch, for like a Santa brunch with her child, and she was asked to leave. And I was just so infuriated. And I don't know if it's true that it was a brunch for children with disabilities or not, but like the mistreatment of the mom and the child and the way that the lady was speaking to them as if he wasn't there, really, like, it made me so upset. So it's like the work that you're doing and raising not only awareness, because awareness is already there. We know what autism is, but taking a step forward and in creating inclusive environments and acceptance for our children and different adults with neurodiversities and that are different than, neurotypical people. So, I feel like it's so important, the work that you're doing, and, continuing to fight that good fight. Sometimes it feels like it's tireless, because we're always doing it all the time, but we are making a difference in one way or another. What did you want to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so interesting that you mentioned the Santa brunch, because for 9 years now I've played an autism and sensory friendly Santa Claus. So I host my own event via my nonprofit KFM Making a Difference, which provides scholarships for autistic students to go to college, provides grants for small businesses that hire people with disabilities, but also promotes disability advocacy and sensory friendly events. And that's so shocking. It's not surprising to me in any instance, but that's a big reason why I think we need, as a society, to host more inclusive events in the hopes that we can get our kids out there exploring the world. Because one of the hardest things I get from parents, I receive about 250, 300 questions from parents each day in my inbox. And a lot of the time, those questions are circled around, well, my child wants to get out there, make friendships, find connections, but the world is not a place where my child can succeed because of the accommodations aren't there. So I think we need to have, I hope that the story goes viral, because hopefully it will lead to an education that we need more inclusive events.
Definitely. And the other thing is that, a lot of us, like parents of kids that are neurodiverse, we want to make the world accepting of our children, right? Like, we can prepare our children to be in the world, but I feel like it's easier to teach a person that is neurotypical how to work with somebody that is neurodiverse, as opposed to having the child that is neurodiverse change who they are to fit into this mold that society deems acceptable, So it's really, doing the work and really sitting down and, petitioning also to like legislators to help create programs to structure change.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, from the legislative level, I mean, it still feels like unless you have a personal connection, there aren't politicians who are really stepping out to discuss topics like autism and disability. So definitely from the legislation level, we need more politicians to get on board and get involved.
Definitely. So I absolutely love your story, and all your achievements. I want to know, what was it that really inspired you to strive for better? Because I know that sometimes a diagnosis can be limiting, or people can kind of discount what you're capable of doing because of a diagnosis. So, what was your motivation, or what was your thought process, more or less?
Yeah, I mean, really for me, finding my ability to self advocate for myself when nobody educated me on what self advocacy was really, really pivotal towards me reaching developmental milestones and achieving what I wanted to achieve in this world. I didn't know I was autistic until I was 11 and a half. And similar to my parents finding it life changing that I was autistic at 4, me myself finding about my diagnosis really helped open the world to more about what my associated strengths and challenges were. And I think it was at that time, even though I was an 11 and a half year old kid, I was still very immature and I really didn't grasp autism as that 11 and a half year old child. As I grew
Mhm.
up after that, things became a lot more clear about why I was doing what I was doing, why I was still having social skill issues, why I was still having mind blindness and not being able to understand others. And I hope my message when I go to speak to a company about self advocacy, inclusion, is that they, regardless if they have autism or not, can find key ways based on my presentations to define their lives and their journeys in the way that they best see it every single day, while also being able to understand who they are as individuals a little bit better by just hearing how I was able to find out who I was
Mhm.
based on my journey growing up with autism.
So, would you recommend for parents to tell their children that they have autism? Because that's like a big debate within the community of parents of kids with autism, whether or not, or like disability in general. Like, if it's not a physical disability, should we tell our children that they have a disability? And like, what age more or less do you think is like recommended? On like, obviously, this is your opinion. It's not, based on your experience, what age do you think would be a good time to tell them?
Yeah, I hate when there's a conversation about it being called a debate. I think every parent should have this conversation. It hinders more than it actually does anything else, because I do get the parents who say, well, I don't want my child to be defined by a label or use their disability as a crutch. But
Hmm.
years of uncertainty about why these individuals are special leads to a lot of confusion for them most of the time. I've seen individuals who have spiraled with depression and anxiety because they don't understand big parts of who they are. I think it should start as early as kindergarten, when a child receives an individualized education plan, which for people in the United States who might be watching this is based on the Individual Disability Education Act. Every student with a diagnosed disability receives some form of either an IEP or a Section 504 accommodations. And that way, when they do start having those conversations, when they do start receiving accommodations, they'll get a little glimpse into why they're receiving those accommodations and a little bit more about what their disability means to their strengths and challenges. And hopefully by getting that early education when they're 5, 6 years old, I've given webinars on this topic of how to actually bring up this conversation, because a lot of parents don't know how to bring up the conversation, at least on a very novice level of 4, 5, and 6 year olds, that hopefully will lead to better understanding and self-advocacy as they grow up.
Yeah, so I interviewed that Spectrum girl. She's a woman. She's actually 40 years old, and she's from Norway. And she didn't find out that she was autistic until about 2 years ago. And that's when she really, like, everything turned on in her brain, because she didn't know why she was having such a hard time in society. and at jobs because she was so different, you know? And a difference is not anything bad, but if you don't know, I feel like it's part of knowing yourself, right? I know that I identify as a female and that I am from the Dominican Republic. I feel like it's just another piece of who you are. And by knowing at an early age, like you're saying, I feel like children can take pride. And then that builds in that advocacy piece as well. Because the more you know yourself, the more you can advocate for yourself. Like if somebody is doing something that is not giving you, meeting your needs, you can say, no, I need this because of XYZ. As a teacher, as a special education teacher, I feel like that's so important. And a lot of our kids don't learn how to advocate for themselves or to speak up, because a lot of the parents, even though they have an IEP and they're in my class, the kids don't know that they have a disability. They don't know why they're being pulled out, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 times a week. They just feel like they're having this special class, special time away with this provider, but they don't know why. So, go ahead.
No, and it's just like so many parents still say things like, "Oh, my child's a late bloomer," even after their diagnosis. They're like, "Oh, that disability can't be true. They're just a late bloomer. They're going to grow out of that disability," and it's just so disheartening. I applaud what you do as a special education teacher, though, because we speak with so many special education teachers. In addition to doing student assemblies, we also do a lot of staff development on teaching the way that educators learn. Because the shocking statistic that came out from EdWeek, which is a great website for teachers who want to just learn more about special education, edweek.org, that only about 1 in every 3 educators receive any form of staff development focused on special education. And that's really, really unfortunate. When we don't have that education out there, especially when we keep talking in our schools about mainstream and inclusion, it really leads to a lot of challenges for students.
That, and then the diagnosis part in the school system, a lot of parents trust that the school is going to do the proper evaluations to give your child a diagnosis of autism, and that is incorrect. The schools are not capable of giving your child a diagnosis of autism. Most of the time when they do get an IEP after their school age, a lot of the time it'll be speech and language, because they can't give a diagnosis of autism, it works against the child, because if you don't have an official diagnosis of autism, you're limited with respect to the services that your child is going to receive, right? And a lot of the time, those extra services that you're missing out on can help your child acclimate better and be able to reach closer to the goal of their neurotypical peers. So I feel like it's important to get an accurate diagnosis, number one, and also, to speak to your child and also kind of get over it. Because a lot of the parents, like you said, my child's a late bloomer. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having autism. There's nothing wrong with having ADHD. They just learn in a different way. Their brains are structured in a different way. So, it's really important to educate ourselves as parents and get over our ego of having a child that has a diagnosis. And the only thing that it will do is really help the child achieve more. I know that your parents, telling you at 11 years old, I'm sure that it helped you advocate for yourself, like you said, but also it started like putting you on the right path to achieve more in the long run. Like, besides, like, I know that your diagnosis doesn't define you, it's just another piece. It's like you're a salad and you have like, another ingredient in your salad. That is not all you are, but it does help to know that you have that.
Salad as I drink a protein shake in the background here. Yeah, no, I get it now. I get 100%. It takes a village again. My quote is, "Autism can't define me, and I define autism," and that's kind of become my closing statement of every presentation I give, whether it's to kindergartners where we read a children's book on autism, my children's book, I Will Light Up Blue, or university students, all the way to Fortune 500 companies we've spoken to. And it's all about the same message of not letting any one thing in your life define who you are, and going out there and making sure that you're defining your life and your journey in the way that you best see it every single day, and keeping that message going, because it feels like a lot of the times it can get lost in just everything going on in our lives. We have bills, we have inflation, we have all these things going on in our society right now that we sometimes can get lost in all of it. So it just leads to more fuel to my fire to be able to speak in more schools and more companies and get that message out there.
I wanted to circle back in something that you said, that the teachers, like you said, 1 in 3. And then the thing is, it's also optional. So, for example, as a special education teacher, you get to pick what staff developments you participate in. I was working in New York City in the specialized district for kids with more severe needs in District 75. And basically, we have a menu of different things that we can pick from. And obviously, I picked a bunch of like autism trainings because 1, I have a child that's on the spectrum, but 2, I was working in a 6 to 1-to-1 classroom. So I wanted to be able to have the tools to be able to better serve my students. Also, the school that I was working at, they actually brought in a speaker. His son was a late diagnosed. I think his son was diagnosed around 10 or 11 years old. But then through the process of having his son diagnosed, he found out that he was also on the spectrum. So that for him was eye-opening, because he was able to see like, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. This is why I'm different, or why I think in the way that I do. So it was like really eye-opening for him and for us too, because, we have this public speaker that's coming on, and, we have this, even though we don't want to we have this idea of what autism is. And he was like kind of shattering all those ideas in like one fell swoop by doing these presentations for us.
Who was the name of the speaker, if you don't mind me asking?
I've been trying to ask. I was reaching out to my principal. She's retired. I know she's like living in Hawaii or something, but I'm going to get back to you with the name of the speaker. But he does a lot of he does a lot of presentations in District 75. But he was amazing, and it was life-changing for me. I want to see if I find the name of the speaker, but definitely it's somebody you should probably reach out to, because another thing that he told us is that he still does a lot of stimming, but the way that he masks it, well, not mask, but like kind of makes neurotypical people feel more comfortable. Right. He puts his hand in his pocket, and he still stims in his pocket, but it doesn't, it's not as distracting. Because another thing about neurotypical people is that they get distracted by anything. And instead of listening to what the person is saying, they'll like focus on what the person is doing. So I was going to ask you, so what was the inspiration for your books? I know the Let's Light It Up Blue is like for children to understand themselves a little bit more, right? And then the other ones, I wanted to ask you, I'm going to pick them up, all of them up actually. Autism and Falling in Love, particularly, I wanted to talk about. I know that you're consulting on Love on the Spectrum. Did you consult on the Love on the Spectrum on Netflix in the US or the UK?
So Love on the Spectrum, so far they've had, and this is our book, Autism and Falling in Love. Check it out. It's on Amazon. Love on the Spectrum had 2 seasons in Australia, and I love those seasons because I wrote a book about dating on the autism spectrum with helpful tips to help autistic adults and neurodiverse individuals find love and relationships in a neurodiverse world. And I fell in love with that series, especially when it went on Netflix. And I stayed in contact with them because I was already on the speaker circuit talking about relationships, already talking about these topics. And we just kind of connected, and one thing led to another. And they asked me, it's like, you said you consulted on TV before, because I had worked with HBO in 2019 on a limited series called Mrs. Fletcher, which had a non-speaking child on it. And they were like, so you've done consulting before. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like? So we continued to dialogue for a few weeks after that. And then they were like, hey, do you want to give an autism training to our team before we have our first US season of Love on the Spectrum? So I got the opportunity to give an autism inclusion training to their staff based on my journey growing up on the spectrum, and then consulting on the full first US season when it came out on May 18th of 2022. And yeah, it's been great, and we just got renewed for a second season, so that's really exciting. So I'm hoping we get to keep it up because it's just a great show. I tell people it's kind of like the thing that you need to watch if you're tired of The Bachelor, because it's like it's a reality TV show that is authentic and just a show that will really just make you smile, and you'll just feel the authenticity of all the people on the show.
I love all the characters, and obviously, you know, when you watch a show, you always pick a favorite. But honestly, it was like hard for me to pick a favorite because I feel like they're all so lovable and they're so genuine and so themselves. And this is like what I speak about. I speak about inclusion and also representation, right? These people are on the autism spectrum, but not only that, but then you are a person with autism that's also consulting on the show in different avenues to make sure that it's authentic and that is representative of the population, you know. So I commend you for that, and I love that show. All of the listeners of the show of my show absolutely love on the Spectrum. It gives the moms a lot of hope that our kids, you know, will eventually be able to find love. But, you know, I'm probably going to check out one of those webinars and, like, you know, share the tips with the listeners to help their kids. Because a lot of the kids, my kid's already 14, and I've seen him, like, transition from a little boy to now a preteen, well, a teenager now. But, you know, it's especially because I'm a girl, like, I don't know how to give him advice or, like, teach him besides, like, from a woman's perspective, like, what I would like as a woman. But, you know, kind of speaking to him in a way that would reach him and he would understand more, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And that's why I like doing peer mentoring, because I never had that role model to look up to when I was a kid who was on the spectrum. I mean, like, I looked up towards other people with disabilities, like Michael Jordan, who had ADD, Magic Johnson, who had ADHD. But in terms of autism, there was really never a connection I had where I was like, gee, I could look up to this person. So, and now in my career, I'm 34 now, getting the opportunity to work with especially 16 to 24-year-olds in that transition to adulthood and give them somebody to look up to, but just be like, hey, I'm here for you. But, like, let's talk. What's going on in your life? Whether it's post-secondary, employment, girls, boys. It's something I hope that I can continue to do, because those questions are tough. And it's I've been through all of that, so I hope I can help them.
It's so powerful what you're doing. I actually interviewed the episode before this one that aired last week. I interviewed an occupational therapist that she's also a life coach for people on the spectrum, because she was working with that age group for I think over 9 years in the Department of Education. So, you know, through working with those boys and girls, she was able to, like, you know, really teach them social skills and how to communicate in a different way. And, like, kind of what the coaches were doing on the show, like, which is, okay, so if we're having a conversation, we need to stay on topic. And if, you know, you show interest by asking questions and things like that. That's what she's doing right now, which is so powerful. I feel like there needs to be more people doing that. And, you know, our kids need it. But yeah, I love that you're doing that. So you are such a busy man. Like, what do you do for self-care? This is, like, my question for everybody that comes on the show.
Well, no, I mean, well, the biggest thing is I love sports. I love movies. I mean, my biggest self-care is just trying to get away. Also, I love to vacation. My philosophy on travel is that my bags are already packed right next to my door. So it's really, really important yeah, it's really, really important for me to just be able to get away and just have a cocktail on the beach and just be able to unwind in that way. I feel like a lot of times people ask me about like self care and like what I do, and they're always so surprised. Well, some of them are surprised, like, oh, you just drink and you go to the beach and that's how you do it. It's like, yeah, like any like most people who would answer that question. So that's pretty much it. Sports, movies. I'm a big basketball fan. Wanted to grow up to be the next Larry Bird, so I was obsessed with basketball growing up. And I have no vertical leap, so that didn't happen. But I'm okay with it now. Yeah. So those are my self care, and I love to write. And I mean, I've written 4 books now, so it's kind of like it's not work as much as it is a therapeutic just getaway for me whenever I get the opportunity to type.
I love that. So when you're writing, that's like your Zen moment. So how do you pick the topics that you write about? Is it something kind of like you have like an aha moment and then you're like, I'm going to write a book about that?
Really? I mean, especially with my work with publishers now, it's really just trying to focus on something that hasn't been done before. I've learned great things from Dr. Temple Grandin, who's an incredible autism advocate. And I'll never forget, she called me. Yeah, she's great. She called me one day because I was trying to figure out my next book. And she said to me, Kerry, how is your book going to be different compared to all the other books out there? Because when I was growing up, there was a book called Look Me in the Eye by an incredible autism self-advocate named John Elder Robeson. But after that book came out, so many different self-advocates, and don't get me wrong, it was great to hear their stories, shared tell-alls about their lives growing up with autism. Mm-hmm. And Temple was like, you can do this, but what are you going to do that's going to give somebody an education that hasn't been seen in this space of autism? And that's when my latest book, Autistics on Autism, I started thinking about just post-secondary adult topics. Mm-hmm. And that's when I got 100 students together to write essays in the book. So we not only get 100 multiple perspectives of what helped individuals on the spectrum growing up to succeeding and getting a post-secondary education today, but also discussing topics that are very niche still in our community. So yeah, that's kind of how I focus on the topics right now. I try to think about something that hasn't been done before that will spread to hopefully educate as many people as possible.
I love that. That's amazing. So I wanted to ask you, I know this is like a very like wishy-washy question, but what is your ultimate goal with all the projects that you're currently working on surrounding autism? Because I feel like you have this humongous umbrella and you're educating, but like, where do you see yourself 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, definitely married. Hopefully have a kid. I've kind of accomplished what I've wanted to professionally. Mm-hmm. And now it's kind of just focused on just having, that's something I've always wanted to be. And my dad is just such a great inspiration to me. Being a dad, hopefully one day, and having kids, it is something that I've been thinking about since my mid-20s. And now that I'm kind of getting in my mid-30s, I'm really thinking of trying to, because I have a career, I'm self-employed, I speak full-time, being able to find that medium where I can focus a little bit more on my personal life, finding somebody to share and connect and live my life with, but also at the same time, hopefully have a family. So that's kind of in the 5-10 year plan. And then hopefully going back into acting. I would love to get my Screen Actor Guild card and go from a crew member to also an actor at some point as well.
Amazing. So that, I guess the theater therapy really worked for you. Like, what was it that they were doing more or less? Because I haven't, this is actually one of the therapies that I haven't really heard much about. So how did they help you in those classes?
I mean, the most important thing was being able to reflect and emote different characters. A lot of the times when I was in just mainstream theater classes growing up, it was always just, we would read a script, we would memorize the lines, and that would be it. What theater therapy helped me understand was we would reflect and talk about how people were feeling when these different dialogues were going on in the script. And that helped me tremendously, especially as somebody who had limited pretend play, who had a lot of challenges with peer-to-peer interaction because I was an only child, but also having those social skill difficulties. Being able to think about that kind of opened my world to, yes, I have challenges, but also so many other people have challenges as well. That was kind of another big area. And also the social element, being able to just practice speech and just memorizing and performing on stage helped me tremendously to really focus on my ability to speak for the first time too. That's
amazing. I was in right before the pandemic hit, I was in a production of the Vagina Monologues. It was like not for profit, and we did it in my neighborhood. But part of the practice was really looking at the character, like you said, and looking at how the character would be feeling and putting yourself in that character's shoes and kind of expanding your mind to think how the character was thinking and how they were feeling at the time. Because I feel like even as neurotypical people, it's hard sometimes to really emote, or like not really emote, but relate to other people in that way. But it helped me see the character in a different way. Because the thing is, like the first and second read, it was like me reading the script. But then once I kept doing those exercises, I was able to really become the character in that way, which was really interesting. So I wanted to ask you, what are some tips that you would give parents of neurodiverse children? So I know one of them is letting them know about their diagnosis early on. So what other things would you offer for the parents that are listening?
Especially if they're school age, definitely see about talking to the school district about getting them a peer mentor. I think at the same time we talk about self-advocacy, peer mentorships can really be pivotal for all individuals, regardless if they're neurodiverse or not, but especially those who may be neurodiverse. I kind of reflect and think back as a 5-year-old child who was only speaking a few words, how wonderful it would have been to have a 6-year-old or 7-year-old mentor who maybe not had autism, but had a neurodiverse ability, be able to interact with them and learn from them. How amazing that would have been towards my development, especially as somebody who had emotional challenges, but also had some immaturity challenges as well. Being able to kind of look up to somebody who's a little bit more mature than me is something I think all of us could utilize, not even in school, but in our professions today as adults. Yeah. So that's definitely one big one. Don't try to recreate the wheel when it comes to therapies. I see a lot of parents who go right away to speech, occupational, and physical therapy as their main 3 therapies to help some child. Make sure that you are meeting your child where they are in their development. Can't stress that enough, because sometimes you will see the popularity of those therapies. You also might look at applied behavioral analysis. It's not going to work for every single neurodiverse child. So really meet them where they are. And then when you actually have a conversation with your child's pediatrician, don't stop at their one opinion. Get a second opinion from a school psychologist, because you want to have multiple perspectives. It takes a village. That expert could be Temple Grandin for all we know. But at the same time, get those 2-3 perspectives, because that will help broaden the scope. But because you'll get more eyeballs seeing your child and being able to understand more the things that they may have missed, that one expert may have missed. So that's a really important note as well. I think those are the big three for me. And there's so much that I could share. It is a spectrum. That's why I love speaking, being able to get to share multiple perspectives.
Oh my God. I wanted to say that the Temple Grandin was actually when my son was first diagnosed. That was like the first movie that I saw. The one that she was actually the consultant on her own movie that they produced, and Claire Danes played her, and it was kind of like it really opened my eyes, to see other people on the spectrum, and because like at the beginning, I feel like the media didn't do such a great job of depicting people that were neurodiverse. A lot of people thought that everybody with autism was Rain Man, which is incorrect. Not everybody, is the same. So seeing another person with autism, and a woman at that, from a different era, because Temple Grandin, I think, grew up in the 60s, right? So it's, go ahead.
No. I think she's in her mid-70s now, so she's probably 50s, yeah. But still, yeah.
Yeah. So she grew up in the 50s, early 60s or whatever, and seeing the change, right, and how she was able to, even then, because the thing is, like, our kids have so many services now and help because of the IDEA Act and everything, but back then there was literally nothing. So seeing her achieve despite the diagnosis at that time is phenomenal. And then seeing other people like you, I would love to see a documentary about your life eventually. Hopefully somebody listens to us and proposes something for you. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's something that's been in the back of my head for a while now. I've been approached by a few people, but I want to make sure that it's done right. And that's I still consider myself young-ish. So
you are young. How old are you?
34. So I still hope to stop it. I thought we were the same age. But anyways, literally that's kind of just something that I've been approached by a few groups, and I'm still waiting for the right offer, but I also feel like my story hasn't been written just yet. That's why I've kind of stayed away from writing an autobiography, just because I feel like there's, knock on wood, there's still a lot of journey to go with it, about my own autism, but also what I try to do to help support the community.
Yeah. Wait, so I wanted to ask you, what has dating been like for you? Like, what do you do like online dating, or do you meet people in person?
Yeah, so dating is interesting in 2022. I mean, we still, especially that year in 2020, there was so much COVID hesitancy. Don't get me wrong, it's important, but it's been interesting. Online dating is still kind of my go-to as of right now, just because I'm so busy with public speaking. But like, for example, I went out to a mixer last week and met a few nice people. But it is hard, especially understanding nonverbal cues. And we do live in a society right now where hookup culture is still very, very significant. So some people I meet are not very open with their intentions, and that makes it challenging. Even though I've overcome a lot of challenges with my autism diagnosis, being able to understand people and what their real intentions are is still a challenge, and that's kind of why I'm still trying to figure out what I want in the future. Even though I do know that I think I want to be a dad, it's about still searching for the one in that special partner. But I am single and looking, and very much dating right now.
Yes. I feel like even for neurotypical people, dating is so hard, and people are like so dishonest. Like, people don't really tell you what they want, and or they'll say, oh, we'll figure it out. But then their real intention is not really having a long-term relationship or actually like really dating. Like you said, it's like so much of a hookup culture right now. I also want to add to the hookup culture, we're part of a disposable culture. People are really not trying to get to know people on a deeper level. It's like, they get an quote unquote ick, or they don't like something, or it doesn't look how it needs to look on Instagram, and automatically the person is like throwing the other person away and discounting that person for that reason. But yeah, it's so hard. I mean, even it's just, I've been dating since I divorced my son's dad, and it's been a crap show. But I'm wishing you the best.
Tell us how you really feel.
What happened? What happened?
Tell us how you really feel.
So,
go ahead. I was going to say, I just feel for you, because I 100% agree. And I think that's the hard thing about online dating also, because if somebody finds just that like microscopic, like little bite-sized M&M thing wrong with somebody, they will just be like, you know what? Instant gratification. I have 20 more people I could swipe left or swipe right to. So I feel like that's another, when you're talking about the disposable thing, it's just who is trying to really just like take the time and try to find that meaningful connection, and who's willing to do that and be honest about it also.
Yeah. I interviewed another woman who during the pandemic met her partner, and he's actually on the autism spectrum and she's neurotypical. So we talked about, what that was like for her and for him as well. So, there's hope out there. There's people that are willing to put in the work. We just have to put in, what is
Yes.
it? We got to get our spyglass and look around really closely.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Dr. Kerry, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. And I'm going to end the show how I usually end it, which is follow me at Comadreando Pod, and follow Dr. Kerry on IG at, can you please drop your handle?
Absolutely. So my handle is Autistic Professional Speaker on Instagram.
Okay. And if you have any questions at all for me or Kerry, please feel free to send me a Comadre-Gram via email at marcy@comadreandopod.com, or slide up into my DMs. Please visit our website, www.comadreandopod.com, to read our latest blog posts, find out about future events, and get official Comadre merch. And thank you for spending time with your compadres. Kerry, you're officially a compadre now. So welcome to the club.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
So thank you so much, and have a good night, everyone. Bye.
Do you have a minute for Comadre time?